那么那个声对，
Can you all hear me?
好啦说，
Okay.
咱目的嘛学下音。
I will continue teaching. Now, as I explained before, the attendants would criticize each other, and all the practitioners would criticize each other. Not only that, they would criticize great masters, and so many people would come to him criticizing this, as he said before. So for that reason, so generally, there are 21 volumes in the collected works of Mikyo Dorje, and when you reread them, sometimes he does make refutations of the scholars from other lineages. Not only the scholars from other lineages, he also refutes Karmakaju scholars. And not only them, he also refutes his own tutor, Karma Chunlipa, saying, this is okay, this is not, he, as well as his tutor, Dumotashi Wizard. So Mikyo Dorje himself Mikyo Dorje used his own intelligence to really get down to the heart of the matter. And if it was logical, then he would prove even another person as a position. And if it was not logical, then he would refute even people in his own tradition. So that is just his character. But some people didn't understand this, and they'd say, Mikyo Dorje, and they'd say, Mikyo Dorje has made this refutation of this great Lama from our religion, and so they'd say Mikyo Dorje was not right. And so it's quite possible there are people who said that. In particular, Mikyo Dorje, there are people who said that Mikyo Dorje in particular refuted the secret mantra Nyingma tradition. So many people criticized him for this, and I will explain that later. I won't explain that this evening. So we will discuss whether or not Mikyo Dorje refuted the secret mantra Nyingma tradition. Now, in his character, Mikyo Dorje, when Mikyo Dorje examined things with logic, and if it was logical, even if it was a scholar from another tradition, if he agreed with it, if it agreed with logic, he would accept it. And if it was his own tradition, if it did not, then he would refute it. But it's deep in his heart. I do not think that he lacked faith for the great masters of other traditions. For example, there's a praise for the 5 great beings of modern times who have written the great treatises about this. And so this is a praise of Sakya Pandita, and praise of Jonin Kunchen. Here are praises of Buddhan Pandita. It's a praise of Lord Tsongkhapa. So one time when I went to see the Dalai Lama, or when he went to see when I went to see the Dalai Lama, we spoke about the praise written by Mikhail Dorje for Tsongkhapa. And in that praise of Tsongkhapa, Mikhail Dorje said that in usual, it said that it's a very said that it's a well known and undisputed that Tsongkhapa spread the teaching of Vinaya throughout Tibet. So even though he had some did occasionally make refutations of Tsongkhapa, but in this praise, he wrote a praise of Tsongkhapa's particular praise of the Tsongkhapa. And when I said this, then the Dalai Lama said, "Oh, that's very good. That's excellent." And so in that way, he did write such a praise. But that praise, I'm not going to go through that one. And the one I'd like to share with you today. And so when I look at this, the one that gives me the most feeling, and I thought I did, so I'd like to share this with you. It's the one that gives me the most feeling. So this song is in the collected songs of Mikhail Dorje. When we talk about a song, it's a little different than our usual composition. We talk about a gur or a song. It's primarily it's like it's talking about one's own experience and one's own feelings and one's own experience and realization. So it's that type of a work. So when you talk about the words of the Sikh, the words of songs are different than the words of our other types of works. They often have more feeling, and so this begins by saying, in the snowland of Tibet, when people merely wear the robes of Vinaya, the one called Lobdob Samdapa took the ways of Bhagavan Shakyamuni, and innumerable monks of wearing the saffron-colored banner of the robes with conduct of Shariputra filled the world. If you do not have faith in this world, who do you have faith in? The people who have been partisan maligned him. I've been caught by harmful friends and confessed my wrongs done from ignorance. Please look after me in all my life. So here, Mikhail Dorje is making a supplication and a confession to Lobsang Drangpa, Tsongkhapa. So later, in later times, people didn't take much interest in the Vinaya, and the teachings of the Vinaya are really described. And so Lobsang Drangpa was just like the Buddha Shakyamuni actually appearing in the world, and he upheld the teachings of the Vinaya. And when he did that, he had many students who were like Shariputra and Madhgalina, and they fulfilled the world or the land of Tibet. And so if you do not have faith in someone like Lord Tsongkhapa, then who do you have faith in? There have been times when I've been caught up by people who have listened. I have criticized him a little bit, but this is primarily because I've been caught up by these negative friends. And to say that, and so I've come under the influence of these negative friends, and I have made these accusations without an understanding. And so I confess them now and say, please look after me in all of my lives. I confess my wrongs done that I did from ignorance. Now, when I was young, the Kajipas and the Gilwas had a little bit of a rivalry or a bit of a grudge. There's a long history about grudges between the Gelug and the Kaju, particularly from the time of the fifth Karmapa when the armies of the Mongolian Gushi Khan attacked the Karmakajis. For that reason, we'd say that the Karmakajis had no power anymore to do anything, but inside themselves, they often disliked the Gelupas, and so it was like became like a sort of custom of doing that. So when I was young, people would always say, "Oh, the Gelupas are no good." And particularly when I was young, my quarters in the building room, there was only one room to sleep in. So there was only one living room. So I basically just one room. In the back in my there were some tankas, and one of these tankas said it had the 35 Buddhas for the confession and when I looked at at the top of that tanka, on the top, there was like Tsongkhapa was drawn on there. And when I looked at that, I thought, my attendant said, they said, "Oh, that's Tsongkhapa, it's no good." And there's like the fabric, and normally you roll it up, right? So it kind of covered the air. You just kind of let it go down and cover the place where Tsongkhapa was, so that you couldn't see him. However, but when I was young, I had a lot of faith in Tsongkhapa. No one ever said to me that Tsongkhapa was good, but I always felt special faith for Tsongkhapa, and I don't know the reason for this, but I have a particular faith in that. Not only that, the fifth for the fifth Dalai Lama, it's not that I have faith, but I do have some affection for him. And the main reason for this is that when I was studying poetry, I studied a poetry text by the fifth Dalai Lama. And so I think the fifth Dalai Lama's writing is really good. And so I do have some affection for him, but when the fifth Dalai Lama complains about the kanjis or just criticizes the kanji, then I can sort of feel like a little bit odd about that. But fundamentally, I feel affection. But so whenever they're around it, people would always speak badly about them. So for that reason, at the time of Mikyo Dorje, that must have been the same. The second reads, when the teachings are nearing their end, the Lord of the six families of Vajradhara, who once again turned the wheel of Dharma, the three Pitakas and four classes of Tantra, Lord Bodong Chokle Namgyal taught inexhaustible Dharma from the alphabet through the Kala Chakra, through the miraculous displays, a reign of his infinite texts reigned. He started a new tradition of the true Dharma that had been unknown in the noble land and never heard by anyone in Tibet. I understood his mind was like space. If you do not have faith in this Lord, who do you have faith in? So here, what this is saying is that it's speaking about the omniscient Bodong Rinpoche. So the omniscient Bodong was a really incredible scholar. His collected works are probably the longest of any of the scholar in Tibet. He must have over 100 volumes in his collected works. And among them, it goes from how to read the alphabet all the way through Kala Chakra Tantra. It has excellent teachings on all the sutra and tantra and the fields of knowledge. And so there was something he wrote in the he had maybe set and he had like 15 secretaries, and he'd go to each of them. He'd say to one, he'd say, "You write this?" He'd say, "Do you write this?" And he'd go around and circle them and say to them, and he'd say, go to them, and the secretaries would, and so he was able to write. In a short time, he's able to write a very great amount of text, and so he had a great intelligence. And so we can talk the Bodong Kagyu, but there's the Bodong tradition. He had particular features of his view and practice. And so there's this tradition used to be accident. Now is probably it's like as if no longer with us. But Mikidor saying I also felt faith with him when I saw the stories of your liberation. But before, when I saw them, I hadn't heard. I didn't have faith for you at first, but now I do. So if I do not have faith in you, who will I do? So next it says, when the 5 generations are rampant, tantric practitioners crave killing, blood, and flesh. At that time, Avalokiteshvara took on the external conduct of the Vinaya and took the form of Vajradhara in a human body. The Jay Ngorchen. He swept off the path of Sukhat mantra. Most tantric practitioners in Tibet consider his teachings authoritative and therefore increased their virtue. May the stream of virtue filled all lands. If you do not have faith in that master, who do you have faith in? In the past, because of stains of jealousy, I felt hatred and attachment. Today I regret this and confess. Please look after me in my life. So this is about Jay Ngorchen. So he's one of the 3 people who talk about the Sa Ngorda Cha Sum. So this is one of them, the Ngorchen. So at that time in Tibet, when they talk about Tibet overall, in particular, when the Khajias would have a Gana Chakra, they would say, we're having a Gana Chakra. And they take that as an opportunity to kill animals and eat their flesh, to drink alcohol. Because of such events, the secret mantra, there were many people who practiced bad conduct through the Tantra. And so Jay Ngorchen said that made it very clear, if you behave in this way, that is in accord with the secret mantra. If you do not, it is not in accord with the secret mantra. And so when he said this, then many of the Tantric practitioners considers his teachings authoritative, and they stopped doing the unvirtuous actions, such as eating meat, and they've increased the flesh. So therefore, the Mikdor is saying, now I feel faith in him. Now in the path, Mikdor is saying, because I felt hatred and attachment to you. But from today, I regret this and I make confessions. So please look after me in all my lives. So next, it reads, when those in the degenerate age with little knowledge cast off the teachings of the scriptures, Lord Rongchen Shakti Gyaltsen came like the great translator Ngok. He made the teachings of the 5th instructions of philosophy shine like sun. He then dispelled the darkness of black-haired Tibetans. If you do not faith in this Lord, who do you have faith in? Please take care of me in our life. So this is a supplication to Kunken Ronchen Chenpo. So the Ronchen Chenpo is very important in our philosophical tradition. And so for this reason, he wrote long texts on the so when Mikkyur Dorje wrote his long texts on the sutras and tantras, Ronchen had a great influence on him. And so he's saying that his explanations of the trivial tests were like shone like the sun, and were extremely beneficial for the study. And for this reason, he says, I developed faith for you. Then the end is the summary. And this is a very important summary. Now, innumerable beings upheld the precious teaching of the Buddha in the realm of the fortunate and spheres. The supreme refuge rare in the world, the jewel that Sangha covers the earth, so joy is equal to space. So what it's saying is that the precious teachings of the Buddha is not just Tibetan Buddhism. It can be understood as all of the Buddhist teachings of the world, but here he's speaking primarily about the teachings of Tibetan Buddhism. And because of the kindness of the masters of all lineage, they are spreading and flourishing. Likewise, the supreme, like the sublime community, or the great field for merit, is the refuge, is the jewel of the Sangha. And because of the kindness of the great masters, it is also covering the earth. And so Mikyo Dorji's mind is filled with great joy. Now it says, instead of being envious of other Dharma lineages flourish in the path, there is no way but to be caught up by the horse of regret. Now, I make a Dorje, is it? When people said that other other languages were flourishing, I sometimes felt a bit of envy in it, but now I feel great. I feel such great regret as even a horse could not carry it, and so I feel great. I have a great feeling for them. And because I have such a great feeling for them, I feel such great regret that I dare be like this, such as that I could not dare to be like this, as Anchal Basari confessed. Though I feel intense regret now, until my awareness is clear in an isolated place, and I'm filled with a light of devotion for the undisputed Kata Mahasiddhas, such as Sanjay Nyingpa, I will supplicate fervently. I understand this is authentic blessing. And so I think I'm feeling such great regret, thinking like, how could I have done this in the past, and having like this unbearable pain or unbearable feeling. It's like he had no choice but to make his confession. There was no way he could not confess. And the reason for feeling these, such intense regret, is that when he was in a isolated place, and because his body and mind were in an isolated place, his eyes became clear, and the awareness became clear, and the mind became clear, and he was filled with not just devotion, but also devotions for the undisputed Kahaji Mahasiddhas, such as Sanjay Nyingpa. And so for this strong regret to occur is his own authentic blessing, So if you think you follow me, do not make Dharma lineages into me and you, or mine and yours. It is fine for the Buddha's teaching to spread. Do not think with your bias that your own function may worry about the teachings of all lower lineages burn intolerably as the wind in the heart. If you think you're following me, if you think you're going to be my student, if there's someone who's saying that, you shouldn't make debates in between the Dharma lineage saying me and you. If anything is the teaching of the Buddha, it's great if it's spread. It doesn't necessarily. If you say that it absolutely has to be our side that flourishes and theirs that doesn't, then that's not okay. So we should always be worrying about what can we do to help all the teachings of all lineages burn. And so this should come should be something that we should always a worry that should always burn intolerably in our heart. So that's what it should be like, he says. And so for that reason, so this is a really important point. We need to have a wider perspective, a broader perspective. If the teachings of the Buddha disappear, then there's no way for there to be Tibetan Buddhism. You wouldn't even say Buddhism. If you can't say Tibetan Buddhism, then you can't say Kagyupa. And so for that reason, so the teaching of the Buddha overall, though the framework is so important that the entire framework of the Buddha's teachings remains without destroying. Now, if we divide the Buddha's teachings into factions and groups, then in the end, then we see others' teachings as a fault. They see ours as a fault. So we see them, they see us, and in the end, there's nowhere that you can identify as the Buddha's teaching. That's a great danger. And so for that reason, Mikyo Dorje himself So for example, from our perspective, Mikyo Dorje is we see him as someone who has a great Lama with wisdom, love, and power. But here he's saying that he's an ordinary person. I felt jealousy in the past, he said. I felt anger in the past. But now I feel regret. Otherwise, most of our Tibetan Lamas, when you look at their numbers, there are very few who say in their autobiographies, "Oh, I felt afflictions before. I felt a desire. I felt hatred. I felt envy. Also, now I regret that. I confess." But Mikyo Dorje is a very forthright in character. So the way I was doing things before was not good. I regret. So from now on, I'm going to change myself, and I'm no longer going to do that. And so he would speak clearly and speak very forthrightly. And so it's easy for us to follow him. Otherwise, if we don't really know what the Lama, what the Guru's intent is, then sometimes we have the difficulty if we don't really know how we're supposed to follow that Lama. But since Mikyo Dorje made it very clear, then there's like this question of whether we follow, engage or not is something that's in our hands. If we are unable to follow Mikyo Dorje, it's our fault. It's not Mikyo Dorje's fault. So this is something we need to keep in mind. So in brief, Mikyo Dorje, as I explained before, was always thinking about sentient beings in general and the overall Buddha teachings, and he always worried about that. And because of that, he became very thin, and he didn't sleep well, and his body became very weak. So this is recorded in the stories. So these days, when we look at the paintings of Mikyo Dorje, then and so forth, and he's kind of he's like that. He's very thin. His cheeks are kind of hollow. He's so thin that his cheeks got very hollow. So in brief, all of the attendants and his retinue and people from all around it would advise him to say that he needed to do misdeeds and should do various things. And many people said that, but he wouldn't actually criticize them or disregard them. But he would try to do what he could indirectly to give up, to turn away from non-dharmic action. So what he said himself, what Mikyo Dorje said himself was, now, I do not have anything else in my life to feel self-important or conceited about, something that I think I did this, something that I can feel that I can say is good, or something that I good. There's nothing that I can feel conceited about like that. But in this degenerate time, there are a lot of people who pretend to be monastics, but in terms of their practice, their conduct is even worse than ordinary liberals. They aren't even tainted by even a whiff of the Dharma. And they enjoy the offerings to the three jewels without any restraint or caution. And I had to spend a lot of time with them. I had to live with them. And that did happen. But I didn't take up their behavior. No, that I just tried to enter them. It's always saying, oh, you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't do that. I didn't always I didn't cut off their ties of hope. Instead, I remained in a equanimous state and was able, without any thought of near or far, and I was able to spend all day and night. It's never apart from enjoying the true Dharma. And I think this is kind of a good, I think that's somewhat of a quality. It's one of the best things I've done. And it's just as I said, it even put that into practice. And other people actually saw him do it. And so how we know this? For one time, there was a Lama named Lama Shapchenpa. And he came to Mikyo Dorje. And he came to Mikyo Dorje, and what he said is, if I were in your position, if I took your place, it would be easy for me to gather 5,000 bhikshus who wore the outer robes. So this is what he said, and when he said that, the reply that Mikyo Dorje gave was, if you were in my position, you wouldn't last even a day. You look at it and you think it's easy, but it's not. Everyone in my retinue have different ideas, different thoughts. No, they have different ideas. And staying in the midst of so many people, what you need to be able to stay in the middle of a sort of group, so many people, is you need to be able to remain within a state of equanimity and to see all the crucial points of samsara and nirvana, to see all the main points of dharma. Otherwise, if you don't have that, then there's no way you could stay in my position. And this is what he said. And so he was able to really firm in his own convictions. And when it came down to the main points of the world and Dharma, he was actually able to know exactly what it was and give direction on that. From one perspective, Mikyo Dorje himself even when other people did non-dharmic things or behaved badly, Mikyo Dorje did not immediately criticize them, or didn't automatically criticize them. He may not have done that, but from that perspective, he would do work even harder for their sake. And so it seems that he had that way of acting, and the way we know that, because no matter, and likewise, no matter when he was studying, he never let himself get lazy, or come into the influence of laziness while he was studying the great texts. And he was actually really very careful about how he did all his work. What Mikyo Dorje said is, he says, I have thoughts of the 8 worldly consumptions, when they occur, I think it did that time. You thought of the worldly thought from the beginning of samsara. You bad thoughts, you've been coming, and so you're going to come. So if you come, fine. If you're going to come, come. But I'm not going to take care of you. And when he thought about it, by the power of that, it was really beneficial. Likewise, Mikyo Dorje himself, when he went to bed at night, as before he did that evening, he would kind of pick up his mala and kind of count how many bad thoughts and count them, count how many good thoughts, and at the end, and even what the words that he spoke, he'd count those. If they were good, then he was happy about them. He'd delight in them. He'd dedicate it for the sake of others. And if there was anything unvirtuous, he'd confess it and make aspirations and prayers that it never happen again. And so he was something who was really assiduous in the way that he worked. He was always very assiduous in the things that he did. And so Mikyo Dorje, there are many people around Mikyo Dorje, and he didn't speak to them directly, no matter what they did. And he didn't criticize them or scold them. And he didn't always say that they should. And so many people, because he wasn't scolding them all the time, many people did come to him. So many people said to him, so Mikyo Dorje keeps a lot of people aren't really low people, are not really monastics, and if they're always people, maybe it'd be better to take the Geshe Rabjangpas who really know philosophy well. Or maybe we should just be surrounded by great meditators. And if we made him stay in that sort of environment, then he would get more offerings, and people would have more influence in terms of the Dharma. And so many people thought that. And so in addition, there's the Lama Shabjempa who I mentioned earlier, right? So Lama Shabjempa, when he came to Mikyo Dorje, he said to Mikyo Dorje, among all the incarnations of the Karmapas, you're the one who's done the worst the most harm to the Kagyu teachings. None has done more harm than you. You haven't worked out as karma. If I were to take your place, I would gather out the 5,000. It would only take me a minute to gather 5,000 bhikshus. When I was in Kham, there are people. I had 500 monks who wore the Dharma robes and didn't drink. Now look at the people. All these people who are they're drinking beer, they're doing all these things, right? And so he said this, and when he said that, the Mikya Dorje, what Mikya Dorje said was, he didn't say anything else. He said, he didn't say anything else, but I prostrate to those who are able to gather a retinue of people who have the three robes of the three trainings, and who are able to gather as many Sangha people as many Tsongkhapa. And so later someone said, Mikya Dorje said that Lama Shabjempa is not a real spiritual teacher. He's not someone who actually sees the teacher. And so as I said, like in the story of the Singha, it's like in the story about the time when the Buddha was taken to birth as a Buddha. So many people at that time thought they had to kill him, and then skin him. And when they thought they should kill the lion, but the lion was very close, they couldn't come close enough to him. But when they looked at it, the lion, but he never did anything to harm those who wore the Dharma robes, the actual. And so they went, and so they put on monastic robes, and they were able to get close enough to the lion that they were able to harm him. And so when the clothes they wore is the monastic robes, but at the inside, they don't have the qualities of all the qualities of Buddhism. And so that's the type of Lama the Lama Shabjempa likes, he said. Mikya Dorje himself Mikya Dorje would never say that I'm going to sit and say I'm resting in equipoise. Do not disturb me. I'm sitting in meditation. Don't disturb me. Or he would never say the Karmapa is meditation, so do not allow audiences for a few hours. And when he was memorizing texts, for example, every day, he would be reading, right? He would always be making sasa offerings and torma offerings, whatever, and he would always do meditation every day. And he would also hold his breath into the yogic exercise, and he had very good practice of that. And he had authentic practice, a practice like a Vajra master. And so he never took any attention and tried to make it look like he was doing that. So mainly what he did is to teach the Dharma, give teachings, explain philosophy to them. And that is where he primarily put his efforts. So many people, what they said to him, so many people at that time said, oh, Mikya Dorje is really lazy because it would be good for him to recite some mandala rituals of some deity. Then that would be good. If you were able to recite even do the full approach practice of a deity, then he would be able to. But he wouldn't do that. And because he's not doing the practice and not giving empowerments, he's really harming the teachings, they would say. And at one time, there's a Lama called Chila. And this Lama came to Mikya Dorje and he said to Mikya Dorje, when he comes to this, he said, Mikya Dorje, and said, who's more diligent, you, the student or the master? Lama Chila said, I'm much more diligent because so if I say the Ashta mantras or Vajra mantras that are recited in a single day mantra, If you were to say that, many the Karmapa, your mouth would catch on fire. Basically saying you wouldn't say it. If you were to say it, your mouth would catch on fire. Then, Micho Dorje then did. I said, "You're the way of it." I said, "You're." I said, "You're less diligent because I can't spend. I can't." And so, because I don't have I made a joke to him saying, you were less diligent, you're more diligent because I'm so diligent that I never do any sessions in my whole life. You could not do that. So, but when he has to practice, but when he would do the practice, such as doing generosity or practicing discipline or patience and so forth, he wouldn't do it in a way so that other people say, I'm being diligent, I'm practicing patience, I'm giving my discipline. He didn't like doing it in ways that other people would see it. Still, if people say that he hadn't memorized the mandala text, then Mikyo Dorje would tell them. They'd tell them exactly of the appearance of all the details of the deity and the visualizations. So just because he didn't remember the words doesn't mean that you can't say that he hadn't retained in his mind the practices of the deities. And we say that he hadn't recited the mantras of any of the minor deities because he had teaching so many children, so that in order to there are many people because when he taught the practice, there are many people who had, without any obstacles, achieved signs of accomplishment through them. And so because of this, the empowerments that he gave, when you say that the empowerments that he gave were not in accord with the Dharma, then that is not necessarily so. So some people pretended that they knew, who pretend that they knew well, and so they'd say that this is how it is, this is that, and say that things should necessarily be one way or the other is not good, is what he said. So in any case, Mikyo Dorje went through many difficulties in his life, and particularly when he was young, as I mentioned before. Gyatso Rinpoche had passed away. Sudra Rinpoche passed away. He was not allowed to meet the lamas who he wanted to meet. And for that reason, and so he was left all alone, and he had very great difficulties about this. So if people like us, it would be difficult for us to bear with such suffering and such difficulties as he did. But he had a very high vision, and because of his efforts, so now when we say Karmapa Mikyo Dorje, among all of the different incarnations of the Karmapa, he is like one of the greatest and one who really stands out. And it's not like, when you talk about it, it's not something who just is like self-liberation from that, but self-liberation, spontaneous like that. It's not like that. It is the result of the many difficulties that he went through. And this is really important for us to understand. Of course, Mikyo Dorje, for example, like for myself, I've had many difficulties in my life. And if we talk about them in brief, when I was in Tibet, until I was 7, I was in my homeland. And I think these are the happiest days of my life, because I had no responsibility, and I was with my parents. And my home was a really beautiful place. So when you think about it internally and externally, it was the happiest time of my life was the time up to the age of 7. And then from the age of 7, they said that I was recognized as being the Karmapa. They said I'm the Karmapa. And so people thought And some people think that when you say the Karmapa, that becoming the Karmapa, for one perspective, it's a very high position, and you get all the food and clothing that you want. This is what people think.
코랑기 쌈배기 된다 가리에 위냐 되다 탐시 애네 샘지 공거를 뒤주기 막까 나버좀 유튜브로 그래 삼삼
And people think that as soon as he tells people to do something what they want to do, then the attendants will immediately do it. And it's really not like that, actually. Before I arrived at Supa Monastery, it was decided that I was a Karmapa. Before it had been decided I was a Karmapa, but before I was Bhattacharpa, there was the steward or Changze, and he said to another person, several people said to them this. What he said was, "He's a Karmapa or not, whoever he is, it doesn't matter. So I'm not going to get him with it. I'm not going to let it get above my neck." So I said, as he said, in the practice, he did it that way when I was young. When someone would make an offering, the offerings are given to the Karmapa. It's given because of the title Karmapa, right? So they offered us, and people would look and they say that I'd gotten it. They think that I would then take care of it. But what happened? But they offered us, but the person who took it was someone who's behind me. For example, there are some people I know from Taiwan, and they knew me. What they would say was, when I had not taught them, they would be sitting in front of me. They would secretly, they would put an envelope underneath my carpet. This is for you. This is to give to your parents, right? And they put the envelope under my bed. The reason was that if they understood that no matter how much offerings, no matter how much money, that the steward was going to take it all. They understood that. So they did it secretly. They would give to me secretly. They would give it, but sometimes it didn't work out, and he'd learn about them and take them. And because after I was done, and I had to go to the puja. When we go to the puja, the stewards and everything would go look and see what was underneath the table, what was underneath the carpet. They'd pull the tortoise and see if anything's put in between. So what they'd say to me is, we're taking them down to make sure that to see whether there's any poison on them. And so that's why we take them down. And after that, but once they took them down, they'd never bring them back. One time, Paul Rinpoche, they asked me, please recognize the reincarnation of Paul Rinpoche. There was a Lama who was the director of Nenana Monastery. He gave me a golden Buddha with a Serdin necklace. It was a statue Buddha of that size, and he gave it to me. So he gave it to me. So later, when the Lama came back, he said, the Changze steward is wearing that statue I gave to you yesterday. And then even more than that, the steward said, hey, look at this. Isn't it beautiful? Does it look good? When he said that, he said inside him fire was. Said I thought to myself, I offered to the Karmapa, why are you wearing it? But I couldn't say anything, he said. And not only that, so the custom had before then had been so that when the parents had raised me from being a child, and then at the point when I was taken up, then then when I was taken from, then the tradition was so that the Chupuladang would build them a house or something. But forget about even building a house. One day, when the Tsupa monastery they would come, they wouldn't allow them to come even more than once a day. The Tsupa monastery they would think. And they didn't even dare come because they thought that the steward and the old lamas would be annoyed when they were being friends from Kam and acquaintance. They would make things. Oh, they're bringing all sorts of people. I have many sisters, but among them, one of the two. But a couple of them were in retreat at Tsurpa, and they would come to see me, and they say, "You're not allowed to meet them. With your father and mother, it's nothing. You're not allowed to eat your mother, who doesn't." So many different such situations. So there are many different problems. In the end, finally, my father and mother are very modest, and they didn't have any pride of thinking, "Oh, I'm the Karmapa's parents." But they came to the end. They just got to the end of their ropes, and my father and my father's friend came to me, and they said, "You have to speak to the Supalada, otherwise you can't just continue on like this." And so my father went to speak to the Supalada, and that friend who came to this, he was actually very forthright. He said, "The Supalada." They said, if we weren't right in front of the Karmapa, I'd just take care of them right away. So my father went down, he spoke to the Supalada. I said, we're the parents. It's not saying we need a lot of great offerings. It's not like we need a lot of presents. We just like to be able to see our child when we want to. And like it be so that his siblings can meet him. If we don't like that, then I'm going to take my son with me and go. And then they got a little bit afraid. And so they got scared and they said, and so when the children were going, they gave them all sorts of new clothes and everything and sent it down. And so there are many situations like that. So there are those situations, but from at the time I was young, so at that time I was 7 years old, right? So I was kind of under control. So I didn't dare say anything to him. But one time, what happened? For some reason, I did say a couple of things. And the son got really, and he took me two hands and he grabbed my two hands with a really strong. It's really something that you're so little, but you're taking that, and he took and squeezed them really hard. And I started to cry. So that's when I was in Tibet. And then when I got to India, I was even worse than that. So I'm not going to speak about them for the moment. So because when people think the Karmapa, it must be a really good life. So it has a lot of freedom. And everyone's going to listen to and do what he says. But it's not like that. It's not even like that now. It wasn't like that in the past either. In particular, in the time of Mikyo Dorje, when he was young, first was the dispute over whether he was the Karmapa or not. And the people who had supported the Western Sloka often tried to do what they can to get around the Karmapa. And that's sort of not only do you have to live in that environment, but he also had to do the activity of a Karmapa, and that was not at all easy. Now, when we read his text, it seems like really easy. But if you put yourself in that situation and think about it, it's not easy, is it? And so for that reason, what we need to think is, Mikito is probably an emanation of a Buddha and a Bodhisattva. He probably had knowledge and understanding, but we can't really know that. But in terms of a human being, he had a lot of difficulties. But what did he do for the benefit of teachings and beings? And that's why we should think of him so important. We need to identify that really clearly, I think. If we are able to do that, then only at that point will we ourselves and be able to get some real confidence in this lifetime, and feel some confidence that we can do something on the behalf of the teachings and beings. So I don't have a lot more to say. Now we will recite the closing prayers.
Karma, Chizo Kendo Midre